What recession? Tesla bounces against the resistance. The market is poised for Apple's reveal, and the mood is shifting. We'll talk about all those things and more. This is Randy Kirk. If you like this kind of content on Friday night, where we take a look at the week in review in terms of what happened with Tesla stock and the overall macro, then please hit like, hit subscribe, hit notify. We've got some phenomenal videos coming up this weekend with Brian White and next week with Brian Wang. So please hit notify. And then also, if you can help to support the channel by taking a look at Patreon, all that information is below. Okay. Don't be lulled into a false sense that this is a new bull that we're experiencing. This is a response, a reaction to things that are taking place. We've never, ever had that moment where we've had a capitulation and the market has said, okay, we're done with this particular cycle. We may never get that capitulation moment. I'm not arguing that, but this doesn't necessarily mean we're on the way to a new bull. We could definitely see the market sell off in the next month or two, depending primarily on interest rates and inflation. There's plenty of reason for caution going forward. But on the other hand, as I've been saying for a couple of months, there is no way that we have a recession with these employment numbers. So on the other hand, the pundit class was way worse than usual in their analysis. These numbers are not at all what the Fed wants. That doesn't mean that that they won't increase next month. I think they're still going to pause in June, probably going to pause in July, but that's not necessarily true given the numbers today. This is just crazy given what everybody was expecting. So the expected number was 170,000 jobs, 330 jobs, almost double the street's estimate. And yet the pundits were out there saying, oh, this is great. This is a wonderful result. And yeah, the Fed's not going to move. How can they even think that way? 330,000 was double the number they were expecting. Not only that, last month's numbers were adjusted up by 93,000. So now we've had two extremely strong employment months in a row in a time when everybody's talking about the need to get to 4.5% unemployment in order for the Fed to take a pause and to believe that the inflation has been handled. The headline unemployment rate was up 3 points to 3.7. All right, so the headline number says, oh, unemployment is up to 3.7. Oh, good. Then the Fed's going to pause. Anybody that takes that number and doesn't do some more homework to figure out what the heck's going on between those two numbers, because you can't have it both ways. You can't have 330,000 new jobs and also have the unemployment number jump up by 3% to 3.7. So what happened? Well, you guys are smart. I know those who listen to me are smart. You guessed it. A lot more people came into the labor force. A massive number of people came into the labor force. Why are they coming into the labor force? Well, one could think that maybe it has to do with all these new bills that are just being passed that are pretty much eliminating the chances in the future that there's going to be this payoff to millions of people for their student loans. They're not going to have to pay them back. Also, that they're not going to have to pay them back starting in a couple of months in terms of monthly payments again. And also eliminating some of or strengthening some of the work requirements in terms of unemployment, folks that are on unemployment. So when you get all of that together, and also that people have probably exhausted their savings. We know that the amount of outstanding credit on credit cards is the highest it's ever been. So now people have exhausted their credit, or the credit is eating into their ability to survive on a month-to-month basis to buy food. Well, all of a sudden, people got to go back to work. People that maybe have been too lazy to go back to work, just haven't wanted to go back to work, have had good reasons for not going back to work. Doesn't matter the reason, they're going back to work. That's the only way this happens. Will this continue? My guess is yes, because it's going to start impacting more and more people month to month, these changes that have happened in the law and the changes that have happened with regard to people just not having enough money to survive in this economy. So this is what I would expect. I would expect to see a continuing increase in employment numbers going forward and no continuing increases in unemployment numbers. I don't see how it's going to happen unless even more people come back in the labor force, and I don't think that's going to happen. However, all of that having been said, the people coming back into the labor force might be reducing the wage inflation a little bit. So the Fed has been very worried about wage inflation. They want to see it around 0.25 per month. That would give you a 3% per year wage inflation. They would be, according to most of the people that I follow, they would be okay with 3% a year in terms of wage inflation, along with an overall 2% increase in the overall inflation number. So this number of 0.3% this month, so the number this month was 0.3%, that's down from 0.4% last month. So that's a pretty significant drop of 25% compared to last month. That might be the thing that actually keeps the Fed from raising this in June and maybe again in July, depending on the numbers that come out at the end of June. So I'd like to see them do a 2-month pause. I think they want to do a 2-month pause just to let the market take into account all of these changes that have taken place in terms of interest rates, give the regional banks a little bit of a breather, maybe get some of this regional, some of these real estate office buildings to get their mortgages redone, refinanced, because there's a lot of refinancing taking place this summer on some of these commercial buildings, and they're in trouble, and that's hurting the regional banks. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why the Fed could pause at this time, and in order to get these issues kind of work through the market. So that's my goal, that's my hope, is that's what they're going to do. All right. So Apple is all-time highs in what is a weak market. I have to assume that that has something to do with the reveal next week. People are thinking it's going to be significant, in particular with regard to their new goggles, or however they're going to do their new system of being able to see in multiple dimensions. Maybe they'll have some AI news. Anyway, I think people are thinking next week Apple could have an NVIDIA moment. If they do have an NVIDIA moment, it doesn't have to mean the stock goes up by anything close to that percent. But if they have a big moment, it's going to have another lifting of all boats in the tech space. That should also lift Tesla in the tech space. All right, what else have we got in the macro? Oil is up, but thankfully it's staying in the low range. So just around $71, $72 a barrel. I'm happy. That'd be great. Hope it stays there. Hope it goes back down. It was as low as 68 during the week. But I think it's up now because the economy is strong in the United States. I think it was weak in the middle of the week because the Chinese economy is under some pressure, but the US economy is so much bigger than the China economy. So I think that's why it's back up this week. Also, the bonds, those are up. That would give me some indication that the bond market is not convinced that the Fed has stopped raising interest rates. Bonds were pretty strong. All the last 3 weeks, bonds have been very strong. I'm sorry, not the bonds, but of course the rates have been very strong. So the bonds have been down as the rates have been up. So anyway, I don't know. I got no prediction on that. Okay. So overall, Cathie Wood will be reporting tonight, and I'll analyze her report tomorrow. And I think this particular month, it will be super interesting. You really want to hit notify to be able to hear what I got to say about Cathie tomorrow morning. I think with all this taking place in the last 3 weeks with Tesla, with tech stocks, with NVIDIA, with inflation, with the banks, with the government overhang with regard to the credit ceiling, all of that going on, I think Cathie will have an amazing, maybe you want to watch the whole thing tonight yourself, but tomorrow morning I will analyze that. And what do I see next week? Well, I think it's going to depend a lot on Apple. Other than Apple, there's not a massive amount of news next week that we should be concerned about. There is some interesting additional Tesla news. So I'm not looking for the market to be strongly in one way or the other at this point, but by Sunday night, I could have a very different opinion. So watch Sunday night's episode to find out where I really think next week is going to take. By the way, I did hit it out of the park this week with regard to Tesla. Tesla, I said would break 200, and I said it would find resistance at 217. Boy, I don't get it that right that often, but boy, that you can't do much better than that. All right, so Tesla continues to ride their good news and the narrative shift and the market mood shift, all three of which is necessary. You need to have the good news, you need to have the execution, you need to have the information that's coming in that's specific to the company, that the fundamentals have to be good. Then you need the narrative shift. I think the narrative shift is ongoing, will continue to go on, but the market mood shift is what we saw this week, and that market mood shift was really good for Tesla, obviously, finishing, I think, today at 214 and a tad down in after hours. So what are some of the pieces of news that we need to look at? Well, let's start with the late breaking news. Bloomberg just said that Tesla could earn $41 billion a year from the Investment Reduction Act by 2031. $41 billion a year, and then it'll start going down because after 31, the amount of credits go down. They're suggesting that it could be 1.8 billion this year. I think that's fairly close to my number. And I'd have to go back and double check. I didn't have time to do that this morning. And that now all Model 3s qualify for the $7,500. So that's extremely good news. So on a Friday night after hours, we get three pieces of outstanding news. That 1.8 billion this year, that's got to move markets. I mean, people finally getting it from an authoritative source, and it's a real number. I will analyze everything that Bloomberg said about this. I will put it back into my numbers. And certainly by Sunday night at the latest, maybe even by tomorrow afternoon, I will report back in terms of how that fit into my scheme and give you an update. Okay, so for Tesla, I've been saying, besides the market, it's going to be about execution. Three things: unit sales, increasing prices, margin improvements of any kind. And most of this, all three of these things are most likely at this time to come from the Model 3 update. Whether that's a Highland, like a very substantial change in the body shape and the body design, so that's a very clear new car, or whether it's just a modest update with some, good stuff happening, maybe in the interior and a few things on the lights or whatever. Whichever way it goes, it is going to help to sell some Highlands. What will sell more Highlands is if the price comes down and they can maintain the margins. So this is what everybody's kind of, I think, the smart people are waiting for is how much of a refresh, what will the margins be going forward, and is this refresh cool enough to start moving a lot more Model 3s? That's what I'd like to see. Hopefully that's what takes place. Last on my list today, let's talk about the next China factory. I mean, the next factory. So Elon was just in China. That got me thinking, because he said we'll have an announcement by the end of the year with regard to the next Giga factory. So I have just done an interview with Brian White. He's a real expert on the factory location scene. That video will probably be up Monday or Tuesday, maybe sooner, but I think it could be Sunday, maybe Monday. Anyway, we'll explain exactly in that video exactly why we think various locations have the greatest potential or more or less potential, what we're putting into the formula to make those decisions. But we were close. I would say that Brian and I were thinking along the same lines. I think that what's happening right now is that Elon is shopping and looking for the best offer. So whether it's China, India, Canada, Korea, South America, South Carolina, Great Britain, more in Germany, there's so many opportunities. France, he was just in France. Indonesia has been on the list. Whichever country that he ends up putting the next Giga in, I think what he's doing right now is he's talking to everybody and saying, okay, what can you do for me? I mean, you need to have a country that's going to be politically interested in moving the project along. You don't want hiccups. You don't want to have even as much that took place in Germany. You'd like the permitting process and the building process to be smooth. He's also probably looking 10 or 20 years out in terms of population, in terms of some of these countries like India, Pakistan, maybe some of the African countries will be seeing tremendous increases in wealth over the next 10 to 20 years. So that could be impacting some of his decision-making. China is shrinking in population. South Korea and Japan are shrinking in population. That could be part of his analysis. Economic issues are an issue, but so are political issues. So China, everybody's worried about China. They're worried about China for a whole raft of reasons, but not the least of which is all their noise with regard to Taiwan. So anyway, we'll talk about all that in detail. I'll just tell you, I'm not going to tell you which one I come down on. I have a strong favorite, but go ahead and watch the video with me and Brian, and we'll talk more about that after that. So if this has been helpful to you, if it's been made you think, if it's helping you to make decisions, please hit like. If it's made you happy, made you feel better, be more optimistic, then hit like. I wish you could hit like twice. Anyway, hit notify, subscribe, and then of course, thank you for all the folks that are helping to support this channel through Patreon. It is so much easier to make a living on this YouTube approach when you have Patreon support. I just can't tell you how much more helpful that is than just trying to live off the chasing the algorithm. Thank you for all of that, and it's been great talking to you.